to search the premises and look at your opponent's hand, so that's going to be interesting to see throughout the game how he responds to these sorts of plays. And he also has a powerful GX attack option if Israel is to commit too many energy to his own Pokemon.
Yeah. Speaking of Israel, you just saw him there. He is absolutely no slouch himself. Had one of the most insane regionals run I ever saw with Darkrai and Veltal variants a little while ago, and still right now proving his worth, and just is in this win and in round now, and he could very easily still make day 2.
Yeah, you basically can't mention Israel Sosa without mentioning Dark Pokemon in the same sentence. It just simply isn't the case. Today, however, he's not playing Dark Pokemon.
What?
No, wait,
still
he is.
Oh, wait.
Wait, he is. Don't worry, everyone. He is playing Silvally, but he is also playing Zoroark GX in the deck as well.
I actually thought for a second that I might have been hallucinating or something. Yeah, I'd be going there, Joe.
No, don't worry. There's still Zoroarks in his build, but he is playing Metal Energy in his deck. So he has lots of this metal support. So a few people have actually been bringing this archetype. We've already shown a Silvally list on the stream already earlier in the day. So Israel, again, I know he's been testing this archetype a lot. There's been some social media with him posting about this deck, and he's actually brought it to the tournament today.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool archetype to see. I've already mentioned, I think, a couple of times before, I actually like Silvally quite a lot inherently as a card. I think in a vacuum, it's very, very strong. I think it's one of these cards that has quite mixed opinions. I think no one says it's outright bad, but some people think, oh, this is actually really, really good. Yeah. And some people instead think, I'm not entirely convinced yet.
And there's actually things that you can look at the card and think, well, this is actually similar to a Yveltal EX. It's like the new age Yveltal EX in many ways. So Sosa's trying his best to still play Yveltal whenever he can.
Yeah, it should come as a surprise to no one, I guess. We do say that actually Zach did have a mulligan, so we'll see if he's able to find something this time. Showing a double colours to the camera there.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting matchup. For Zach, of course, he does have the option to spam Acerolas whenever possible. I think that's going to be one of the biggest interactions we're going to see throughout the series. Whenever Zach is able to hit Acerola, it could be a big swing in his favour. Israel does have one-hit KO option available to him, and that's with the Silvally's GX attack. But beyond that, he may be capped looking for 2-hit KOs throughout the game. He does have tech cards like Cobalion, which we know in the late game can do a big push of damage. But overall, a big factor of this game is going to be how often Zach can get Acerolas off.
Yeah, interestingly, Israel, unlike a lot of the other Metal Toolbox decks, he's actually opting not to play Celesteela. This is something that we're seeing quite frequently in a lot of the other lists. But he is playing Necrozma GX. I'm almost certain that might come up at some point.
Yeah, that could come up, and he's also playing one other Tech GX Pokemon, and that's Turtonator. We've just mentioned how insane Shell Trap can be. That's an attack that has colourless attack cost, which means he can be splashed in, as he has been in this deck, to again really hurt these Acerola variants. So this could be a huge thing for him. We see him, he's got the turn 1 Bridget, optimal stuff for him. He's got himself another type Null, he's got himself a Zorua on the bench as well, and he's going to have his pick of whichever GX he wants to slap down on the bench straight away.
Yeah, we are off to an absolutely great start here.
There it is.
Which of these two players do you guys at home think will be able to make it to day 2? Will it be Israel Sosa of the US, or will it be Zach Lesage of Canada? You can tweet us using the hashtag #PlayPokemon if you wish to, just so put your votes in. But other than that, I'm really looking forward to watching the rest of this game.
So we are going to see a basic energy attachment, and it passes over to Zach now. He does put down the Young Goose, but we just saw the prize cam that the Gumshoes GX is in the prize cards, which is a little bit unfortunate for him. Not amazing in this matchup, because it rarely gets the one-hit KOs unless Israel is stacking energy on something like that, Necrozma potentially. But we are going to see him simply attach to his Wimpod and go for the end straight off the bat here.
Yeah, I think if we talk about Necrozma here, I think we just have to draw attention to the main thing, or the only thing Israel were really using it for is, of course, for this Black Ray GX attack. It's got absolutely one of the most... I think this is one of the GX attacks when I think I had the biggest reaction to it in the sense of that is immensely powerful. For 3 colourless energy, does 100 damage to each of your opponent's GX and EX Pokemon they have on the field.
Yeah, it's a really powerful GX attack. We know in Expanded it is like the go-to GX attack for many variants because you have the option to use Dimension Valley. Not quite as powerful in this day and age in Standard, but you do still have so much energy acceleration from the Silvally in general that it's still a very efficient attacker. So we are going to see Zach simply use his Wimp Out ability to jump into the Tapu Koko and pass it back over to Israel here, who finds himself the Silvally GX. Zach is going to make sure he knows about this card.
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to be playing this sort of archetype. It does take a lot of guts to bring a new deck to a tournament as big as this, but Israel's going for it, and Zach's just going to have to refresh his memory.
Yeah, it's like, what was this do again?
So we do see... Israel, he's going to get himself an energy in the discard pile with the Professor Sycamore, which is great stuff for him. He also was able to hit a double colourless energy, so he can use the Gyro unit to get the free retreat on the otherwise 2 retreat cost type Null and jump into the active position, get a knockout on this Tapu Koko and also start setting up his other type null on the bench.
And already in this very early turn in the game, we can see just like one of the facets of Silver Valley just showing how useful it is. Just the ability giving all your basic Pokemon free retreat. So even though type null would normally have a retreat cost of 2, doesn't matter. Just evolving the bench Silver Valley, able to retreat into it and get the attack off straight away.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it was just a Professor Kukui for 2 cards. He did find himself an Ultra Ball, though, so Zach is going to be able to find himself a Golisopod. He does have Floatstone in hand, so he can keep the pressure on here, which is a huge thing for him. Otherwise, without that Professor Kukui, he could have been in big trouble. But fortunately for him, he has found himself the Golisopod. He's going to keep the pressure up, responding on Israel's main attacker as of right now, of course. But I wonder how much longer his hand can see him through for the next few turns.
Yeah, I feel like one thing that's going in Zach's favour right now, and Zach, again, just making absolutely sure that the thing isn't a threat. I think he just might be really the GX attack, just thinking if that can one-shot him. But of course, the Rebel GX attack, for 3 colours, a really great cost, but it does 50 damage times the number of opponent's bench Pokemon. So right now, only going to be doing 50, not a threat to Golisopod.
And interestingly, we do see the first impression for 120 damage. We know that Zach's other card in his hand is a Guzma. So instead of holding the double colourless for potentially Armor Press to finish off the Silver Valley next turn, he says, you know what, I've got the Guzma in my hand anyway. That's the only option I currently have. I'll probably be doing that next turn.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how Israel responds as well. So with an Ace of Roller, that's how he responds.
He plays 2 of his own copies of Acerola, and it's so great in this archetype because you do have the inbuilt acceleration from the Silvally itself. So both players opting to choose to play this card, and it is a big swing here. So Israel's main attacker was heavily damaged. Now it's Zach's that's very, very heavily damaged, and he's just picked up an Acerola as well.
Acerola was going on here, and this is really showing any card which is able to pick up Pokemon from the field is insanely powerful, and this is really sort of demonstrating why.
It's a big top deck from Zach, and he's going to simply respond. He attached the double colours to the bench, which means that now he can go for the Armor Press attack for 100 damage, which is exactly what he's going to do. Great response from Zach. Good top deck, keeps him in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, important thing to note is some people might be wondering, oh, why didn't you use First Impression there? Because you obviously brought the Golisopod out that turn. Well, because the Wimpod was in the active, and then it was evolved into the Golisopod, the First Impression extra damage trigger doesn't happen, essentially.
Yeah.
So that's important to know, and that's why he did the Armor Press instead.
So again, Israel, he's able to put down a Kabalion, which is a big thing. He's also found himself 2 evolutions for his benched GX Pokemon. We're going to see the trade there, getting rid of the Psychic Memory. Not going to be great in this matchup.
Indeed
for sure.
Not.
We saw, I think he attached a Basic Energy to his Necrozma on the bench, and we are going to see the Silvally continue to use Turbo Drive for a 120 all over again, and also committing an attachment to his bench with that acceleration.
Well, it's going to be 130 because the choice band is still on there, and then it would be 150, but then, of course, the Armor Press kicks in, reducing it by 20. I mean, back to Zach's side, we see just a Sycamore there, and is he able to see what he needs?
Finally bailed out. I mean, he was just sat on nothing but that Guzma, so it's a big draw from Zach. Looks like he's got himself a Ball Search card. He has a Floatstone on his current Golisopod, so potentially he could be going for some first impressions on another Golisopod if he's able to draw into it.
Well, he does have an Ultra Ball, so I think, indeed, Joe, that is what he's doing, and he's got a Grass Energy ready in hand as well. So yeah, there's the Ultra Ball. It's a card that was supposed to be the Super Rod and the N, and then just going to grab the Golisopod, and he'll be able to retreat into it. Well, we should make sure to evolve first to actually do the thing, as we just mentioned.
So it's a fast-paced action here. Both players. Looks like, in fact, Zach's going to go for the Remoraid here, so we could be seeing a Crossing Cut GX in order to take the knockout this turn.
Interesting. Yeah, that would also work, of course, and then, although that would use up his GX stack for the rest of the game, he maybe would have preferred to save that to take a one-hit knockout on a Tapu later on, but maybe if he decides that's the best thing to do, then that's what he's got to do.
Yeah, we know he has the Rescue Stretcher in his hand. I think there's an Octillery in there from an earlier turn, so maybe he's trying to make his hand more sustainable for the future turn. So we are going to see the use of the Crossing Cut GX to finish off Israel's Silvally. He's going to take 2 prizes. Didn't quite pull out the Gumshoes, but he's already brought up the Young Goose as a sacrificial lamb in the first place. Israel promotes the Kabalion, which typically has a 2 retreat cost, but he's got that other Silvally in play, which allows him to make these sorts of luxury plays just to show off, hey, I have this, why don't I just use it?
Yeah, exactly. To put off the hard decision making so that I can think about more important stuff. There is another Ultra Ball from Israel. I'm going to discard it to be a Field Blower and a Sycamore. I'm not entirely sure what he's going to go for here. It looks like to be like another type null. He just wants to make sure he keeps a constant stream of Silvally. It's obviously the main thing that makes his deck work as efficiently as it does, so it's important to have as much access to that as possible. And he does have the other double colours as well, so this Young Goose is going to hit the discard pile. Oh no, not even the Young Goose.
Nope.
The Golisopod is going to hit the discard pile because there is the Guzma bringing it up, switching into the Silvally, and now the Turbo Drive will pick up the knockout on the Golisopod, but not before attaching in energy.
Yeah, so one more attachment. You can see this is why the Silvally, many players deem it such a great card. card. I'm part of that camp. I think Sylvally GX is such a powerful card because you get inbuilt energy acceleration. Israel hasn't missed a beat in terms of attacking, and even with an Acerola where you almost minus attachments from your own board, he hasn't missed a step because every single turn he's got extra energy into play thanks to Turbo Drive.
You know what Sylvally GX reminds me of in terms of why it's so strong? It reminds me of why Mega Man Netric EX performed so well as a card for, because even then for that card you needed to attach a Spirit Link and you needed to Mega Evolve, and it that attached 2 energy and the energy cost was 1 less, although it was a basic plus something else, so it's even still about the same level of flexibility. But that deck was really strong for that same reason. It was just, constant, never missing a beat, and one thing leads you to the next, and Sylvally is doing the exact same thing here.
It's interesting that Zach is playing not only Octillery but also a Rangaroo, so we're going to first see a couple of cards from the Abyssal hand here. Drew into an N, he does have a Guzma, but he doesn't have any Ball Search cards to maybe get him into a Golisopod, so potentially he's going to try and refresh his hand. We do see that indeed, ending himself to 4, Israel to 3. Both players, of course, have Pokemon on their bench that can help them get more cards through the trade on Israel's side, and Zach still has the Instruct available to him, so let's see if Zach's going to be able to draw into a Floatstone as well as another Golisopod to keep attacking here.
Yeah, for me, I think it's very telling that a lot of the decks that are performing well are the decks that have these built-in sort of draw engines, because as long as it is around in the game, it will be one of the most impactful cards in the game. So if you can build your deck in a way where it reduces that impact, you are a lot more likely to win. And we can see that playing out here.
And it's one of those things where when we had Versus Seeker in the format, there wasn't always Octillery in all sorts of decks. There wasn't always a Rangaroo in all sorts of decks because you naturally had 3 or 4 more outs every time you got N to a low hand size. But now that decks have had to adapt, they have to play these cards to make sure that they can sustain themselves even when taking multiple prizes. Zach got himself a Golisopod and got himself an Ultra Ball where he can thin 2 cards, and now he's going to get a big Instruct here, so potentially still can hit the Floatstone.
Yeah, not only that, but after he plays that as an Instruct, he will be able to Abyssal Hand as well, because I don't believe he's done that either. So Zach, with the double whammy of draw here, is going to have a really good chance of seeing that Floatstone he needs.
So here is the Instruct. 3 cards to see what he can get. Just energy cards. I think he did use the Octillery.
He's going to concede.
Wow, that's a big concede. Zach trying to buy himself as much time as possible, seeing the Israel side of the board. It was only going to get stronger. He was going to take 1 more prize. He was going to get more energy on the board with the Turbo Drive finishing off his turn, as well as the fact that he could have more manual attachments in the turn. He could do so much in his turn, and simply because Zach didn't have anything to respond with, he felt he was too far behind. Let's move on to game 2.
Yeah. So he must have already used the Abyssal Hand then, I guess.
I think he used it before the end. He actually Abyssal Handed into it. I think previously he only had the Guzma available. So out of draws there, even though he plays both of those setup Pokemon. And Israel really demonstrating how dangerous that deck can be. 1 Acerola was such a big impact, I have to say, and he does play 2 copies in his list, so pulling out all the stops here, Israel, and he's really demonstrating why he is doing so well with this archetype.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Now, we were talking earlier about tech Pokemon. One Pokemon which we've seen in a lot of these sort of either Sylvally or sort of Metal Toolbox lists is, of course, this Kartana GX, but we've not actually seen anyone use it yet, I believe.
No, it's one of those things. We had the poll with the Ultra Beast. What's your favourite? Everyone said Kartana GX. Israel is playing it. We know that Zach is playing 4 double colourless energy in his list, and yet we still haven't seen it into play. Oftentimes Israel has been opting to have more attackers on his board throughout the game. He's opting to have the Necrozma as a threat, just because it basically prevents Zach from trying to get multiple GXs into play, punishing him for putting down things like Tapu Lele in the late game, giving him plenty of options. So it looks like Kartana is one of these big swing cards for specific matchups, not necessarily this one, but it's still just a great utility card to have in your deck.
Yeah, definitely. Also, I am still holding out to see a game being won with the Blade GX attack. So, for those of you who don't know what it does, Blade GX just simply states, take a prize.
Yeah, for just 1 metal energy. So if it's a sudden death situation, he's your best friend.
Absolutely. Just imagine facing your opponent at sudden death, and your opponent opens Kartana, and you just think, oh no.
Wow, so it looks like Zach went first. He could only attach a double colourless energy. He has got himself a Golisopod though, so maybe a little bit more tanky at the very least. He doesn't have any energy, so he's going to try and stall the Cobalion here with a Guzma play and pass it back over. This could be really awkward for Zach.
It could, and the problem is Israel has a draw supporter, but it's an N.
Wow, bailing out Zach here, that's insane. They both look at each other and say, well, I actually had no choice. I have to go for the N here, even though I could start pressuring you. I know you have nothing, but guess what? Neither do I.
Yeah, so it's one of the situations where, and kind of helping both players out right there, and sort of, it is nice in a sense because it means that we're actually going to hopefully see a full game play out. But if you're Israel, you've got to be thinking, missed opportunity.
So a big thing for Israel here is if he can find himself type nulls. This is often the means of retreating in his deck. It's all via the Sylvali GX and Guzmas. That's his only other option for retreating. So if he can find himself some type nulls, he's going to be able to move this Kabbalion in the following turns. He can also maybe look to get some attachments into play. He still could evolve up into the Zoroark GX as well for more draws. So plenty more he could be getting this turn.
It's like we could be getting, but nothing he actually did get. Just another Registeel, no type null, as you just said. Importantly, that is a very unfortunate draw for Israel. And I mean, he's going to use the quick guard attack, but it's not going to make much of a difference because it only prevents Kabbalion from being damaged by a basic Pokemon, and Gliscopod is definitely not a basic Pokemon.
That's very true. It looks like Zach had a really interesting choice there. He had a handful of different supporters, but no energy. He opted to use the Bridget, so he won't be attacking again this turn, but it means that he's starting to develop his own side of the board.
Yeah, maybe. Do you think he maybe misread the Kabbalion, or do you think he just thought to himself it's more worth setting that up anyway?
Yeah, I think it's just important for him to set up his own side of the field. I think maybe with an Ultra Ball he could lower his hand size enough for an Orangaroo draw, but I think overall he just wants to get his own board developed while Israel isn't drawing much.
I mean, it is a decision that could pay off in spades for Zach, as we can see Israel's hand right now. It's 2 Guzmas and 2 Metal Energy. It's not very good.
And we are going to see Israel does draw. He gets himself a Kartana GX, which is actually really big in this spot.
Yeah, actually is huge in this spot, and perfect timing considering we just mentioned it. There goes I can't remember the name of the ability now, but of course, as we just mentioned, it does let you discard a special energy.
Yeah, it's Slice Off.
Slice Off,
yeah.
Wow, brutal.
So we are going to see Israel trying to target this Remoraid as quickly as possible whilst getting a Turbo Arm in there with his Registeel, dealing the 30 damage. Goes back over to Zach. He has plenty of options here. He has Ultra Ball, he has Professor Sycamore, he has Acerola if he wants to pick up this Remoraid, but at the moment still whiffing on basic energy to get this Gliscopod attacking. So we are going to see an Ultra Ball before anything else. He could be going for something like the Octillery or maybe even a second Gliscopod GX, depending on which direction he wants to go here. Typically drawing cards is always the best policy, so I would be surprised if he didn't go for the Octillery here.
And he did indeed do just that.
Drawing cards is really, really good in Pokemon.
Who would have thunk?
So, here we go. There is the Ultra Ball. Going to grab himself Octillery. He still has a supporter that he can use. He's just making sure, yep, that's the target I chose. And he's going to be able to evolve into the Octillery this turn, trying to give himself as many outs as possible to start finding switch cards, in addition to basic energy. Just keep attacking with this Gliscopod. He's going to attach the Choice Band to that Gliscopod as well, giving it a little bit more damage in later turns. Obviously not too useful on a 130 HP Registeel. One of the big selling points of that card is that you can take one-hit KOs. Well, you can't take a one-hit KO with Gliscopod, I should say. He was holding on to a Professor Kukui, but he didn't fancy his chances of just drawing 2 cards into exactly a switch card and a Grass Energy, and I don't blame him.
I don't blame him. And also, he does think he didn't, let alone... Never mind not drawing off 2 cards, he didn't draw either of those off of 7 cards.
Yeah, so we are going to see an Ultra Ball here. Maybe there's a few more cards he can thin from his deck to maybe get an Abyssal Hand and get a little lucky off 1 or 2 cards. We'll have to see here, but it could be, again, another slow tempo turn for Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. The one saving grace for Zach here is, as we already mentioned a couple of times, Israel was not able to find type nulls in the last few turns. Here comes another Choice Band going down onto the Gliscopod, and yeah, there's going to be an Abyssal Hand for, looks to be 2 here, and he does draw Choice Band Grass energy,
but he still can't move out of the active position, so he's just going to have to be content with passing here, and getting rid of the Octillery next turn from Israel could be like such a big play, but doesn't look like he has anything going on in his own hand, so he's going to stick with the Turbo Arm, just doing 30. Goes back over to Zach.
It is close but no cigar, and yeah, if we're going back to Israel's side, it's more like nothing at all. It's just the 30 damage, not even being able to attach anything. And there's the Floatstone as well.
The very next card. It's always the way, isn't it, in Pokemon?
It is.
We are going to see, regardless, there's going to be a Guzma being played, targeting down the Zorua, it looks like, so Zach can take a cheeky single prize and also start denying Israel of draw throughout the game, which is really good for him. When you know your opponent's dead drawing or doesn't have many options, the best policy for you is to limit how many outs they can do to get out of this situation.
Yeah, exactly. How much do you want to see that this is going to be a Zoroark now? No.
So
that would have been too perfect.
we're going to see a Guzma once again. Israel targeting down the artillery. So he's doing the same thing that Zach just did, trying to deny the draw engine on both sides. He's been chipping away at this artillery, and finally it's going to go down, netting Israel a prize in response. And Zach is going to bring in the Tapu Koko here.
I do believe that the prize you just picked up was a type null as well, so obviously it's not ideal until he really would want to draw supporter, but at least he can bench that and then maybe next turn get a Silver Valley and really start to get himself going.
So the Tapu Koko being active does mean that he can simply freely retreat so that he can activate the secondary effect of First Impression for maximum damage. Still not getting a knockout, but still a good chunk being dealt to this Registeel. Looks like Israel takes an Acerola off the top, which isn't too bad either.
Nope.
And he's going to re-promote a new Registeel, put down a type null this time and attach an energy to that, and keep putting pressure on here.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good top deck for Israel there. Is able to undo all that hard work. But it looks like a really fortunate draw for Zach, as he's actually able to find the Guzma, able to bring up that type null. And it does have a lot of HP for an evolving basic, but it's 110. That's still enough for Glyspod to KO it.
Yeah, indeed. So we do see Zach goes for the Guzma, targets down the type null, takes another prize here. Both players playing at rapid pace, really, because their hand can only take them so far. Israel still failing to draw into anything too useful. He does find himself double colourless energy, so maybe even attacking with the Kartana could be something he goes for on the next couple of turns. Just being hopeful, but for now he's going to keep on chugging with this Turbo Arm, trying to set up as much energy as possible on the bench, and he's also thinking, you know what, this Kabalion could start coming in important, seeing as though Zach's starting to take prize cards.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kabalion, of course, is one of these has one of these attacks that again does more damage for each prize card your opponent has taken. Now, if Zach were to take a prize here, although I'm not even sure how he'd do that, would he actually have enough to finish it off with Kabalion?
Yeah, so Kabalion's Revenge Blast attack deals 30 plus 30 more for each prize card your opponent's taken, so it would go to 120 damage, and plus 90 is exactly enough. So
it is.
Zach has to be careful if he wants to keep taking prize cards here, because it could walk into Israel's plans.
Yeah. Well, having said that, I don't. As we mentioned already, Registeel does have 130 HP. So even if Zach was able to trigger the extra damage First Impression, it wouldn't happen. He would have to attach double colours and crossing cut, essentially.
Yeah. And it looks like he's content to simply do the First Impression for 30, because that puts him in range.
Yeah, it does. And there is the out for Israel. Finally sees the Ultra Ball. He's going to be able to use that to grab himself a Tapu Lele, and we're going to do Wonder Tag, and I imagine this is going to be for a Sycamore.
We have a game, thank goodness. Huge sigh of relief from Israel as he's able to use that Wonder Tag to find Professor Sycamore. He still has bench space to start looking for things like type null. They were so important in the first game where he was able to win, so that's something he's going to look to establish here. And at the moment, the Registeel is still stuck in the active position, so we'll only see another Turbo Arm this turn. But he's going to hopefully get some more attackers going on the board.
I don't know about you, Joe, but to me, with the way I see this board state right now, the crazy thing is, it looks like Israel was just so far behind in terms of, how little he was able to work with for so long. But he is not out of this game.
Yeah, that's the ridiculous thing with Turbo Arm. You just have so much energy on the board. They're not the ideal attackers for Israel, but they're still attackers. They're still dangerous in the right situations. The Registeel's having an annoying amount of HP for Glycopod in particular. He could have a few turns here still.
Yeah, not only that, but that Necrozma is posing a bit of a threat now, because another Turbo Arm does put the Glycopod up to... never mind.
Never mind. There is the Acerola. He does have another Wimpod on the bench, which he might evolve. He has to think twice about it at this point. But no, he doesn't think twice. He just puts it straight onto the board. He's not worried about no Necrozma.
He probably didn't even think once.
And we are going to see the Wimpod as well in his hand. It'll probably replay down... and stacking grass energy all over his board, trying to get more first impressions in. We're going to see the free retreat from the Tapu Koko going into the Glycopod that he's just evolved, and going to be able to take a knockout with first impression here.
Yeah, so there it is. The Registeel goes down. One more prize for Zach, and now it looks like Israel is going to be promoting that Kartana GX. Are we going to see it go back into the deck?
It's Kartana time, so he's going to be looking to find himself a double colourless energy. It also only has the one retreat cost, so it gives him the most flexibility from any other Pokemon he could have promoted, seeing as though his list is typically at least hoping to have Silvally in play to make it an easy choice. Now it's much more difficult when you don't have that online. Israel does opt to put a Zorua onto the bench instead of a type null, thinking that maybe Zorak can be an out later on in the game, and it's going to be big to see if he can get double colourless here.
Yeah. Now, I think we should mention, you said that obviously Israel would like to dig for a double colourless here, potentially to use Gale Blade.
No, I'm thinking Black Ray at this point.
Oh, of course he can just swing.
If he could swing 200 damage on this board, it could be really awkward, because you can only Acerola one target at once. Looks like the N wasn't kind to him.
No.
Only drawing 5 cards, not quite getting him there. So again, it's another awkward turn for him.
No, what I was going to say, though, is if he did do Gale Blade, it's not a very impressive attack, as it looks like. 70 damage for free energy, but he can, with the optional effect of the attack is you can shuffle Kartana back into the deck, 4 cards attached, and then he can maybe use that to rebench it and maybe discard a double colorless later on.
That's very true. So we are going to see the retreat of the Kartana GX. There was a choice band attached to the Cobalion, so we are going to see a Revenge Blast here. 3 prizes being taken for Zach. Not going to be a knockout, but a big chunk here. And again, it looks like Israel's trying to set up this Necrozma.
Yeah, so the ideal situation for him would be either to... He can approach it one of 2 ways. He can maybe try and go for the Black Ray next turn and then try and finish off the Goliath after that. Or maybe he just goes all in with the strategy. Ray tries to soften up the other Goliath and then go for the Black Ray.
And looks like Zach doesn't have a great hand. He has Guzma, so he can take his pick of what he would like to start targeting. There's also a couple of Field Blower in his hand, but it really doesn't take him much further than that. So we're going to see a Floatstone getting attached to the Wimpod. I think he's just trying to play down as many cards as he can, assuming that there will be ends incoming in the future. But what's his best target here with the Guzma? He can't take knockouts on many things. This is the only target he could take a prize on with the Guzma, so that's what he's opting to bring up. And it's going to be a first impression once again. I wonder which one he's going to go into. Looks like he's happy to sacrifice this Glycopod in order to take a prize here.
Yeah, and this is actually going to pay off for him because, again, assuming that he takes prizes in the normal order people do,
oh boy,
that Tapu Lele is sitting pretty.
Tapu Lele would indeed be the next prize he were to take if he goes in the usual manner, and that's exactly what he's taken, so that's a big thing for Zach to pick up. So it's down to Israel to see if he can get an end this turn to maybe deny late game players. We're going to see a Guzma from him going into the Cobalion.
He's going for the exact strategy we were thinking of, isn't he?
Yep, so he's trying to get a big Revenge Blast off. Once again, another prize for Zach, so just 2 remaining, which means this Cobalion will be doing 180 damage. Oh no, the choice band's been taken off, so it'll be 150, sort of negating the fact that the Field Blower was played.
Yeah. Now, the one unfortunate thing that for Israel, what I was about to say is what he could do, it would be hilarious, but it's not possible, is Black Ray and then Blade, but of course they're both GX attacks, so you can't do that. You can't just take 4 prizes and then finish off a Blade next turn. You would have to KO something else after doing the Black Ray.
So Zach, with the potential Guzma in hand, he actually top deck a Tapu Lele, which makes it a lot less exciting. But if he were to have drawn a energy card, he could have gone for a Guzma into a GX attack to win him the game. Wasn't able to do that, so it looks like he's going to grab himself an Acerola, one of the best combinations that you can do with Glycopod, undoing so much damage. He has 2 heavily damaged Glycopods, and he wants to get rid of this because there's an incoming Black Ray for sure. Yeah,
he recognises that Necrozma as a threat. He knows that if he just leaves that unchecked, or rather if he doesn't mitigate for it, that is going to come back to bite him. So going for that Acerola, I imagine we picking up the active Glycopod. I mean, no, actually, which Glycopod do you pick up here?
I think it's reasonable to do both, in all honesty, but because you want to damage and KO the Cobalion this turn, you have to do the active so you can bring up the new one. He may still go to Tapu Koko. That's always just his ritual, making sure he has every option available to him to still make new decisions. Interesting that he's going to attach to the new Wimpod on the bench. He's actually reconsidering this. I think this indicates that he won't be evolving the Floatstoned Wimpod into a Glycopod because he's just so aware of Black Ray at this point.
Yeah, you might want to see if this one Glycopod that's already there can carry him through. In other circumstances, there is... Yeah, it's a very tricky decision he's faced with here because, again, as we just said, we know that he knows that Black Ray is a threat. And actually, he's going to opt to attach the Grass Energy to the Wimpod that can't evolve yet.
He could even Field Blower the choice band on his own Tapu Koko if he wants to thin 1 extra card from his hand. He's not opting to do that, though, keeping it for a rainy day. Nothing wrong with that, but we do see the first impression finally dealing with that Cobalion, the only real attack Israel has had to offer throughout this game, keeping him in it. But we do see him now. He's going to try and stabilize once again with the N. There's 2 energy currently on the Necrozma GX, so just 1 more, and he can use that Black Ray, not only knocking out the Glycopod, but also putting 100 damage on the bench Tapu Lele. So,
and that's exactly why he didn't evolve. If he'd evolved into the Glycopod, there would have been 3 things that would have taken 100 damage, and then at that point, Israel has a lot of different things he could target down to win the game. As it stands, not so much. Yeah,
it's one of those catch-22 situations where now he doesn't have... He has to draw into a Glycopod to keep attacking because he didn't evolve into it, but he's saving himself 100 damage on that Glycopod, and that could end up being too detrimental later on in the game. But it looks like he doesn't have energy here.
He misses the energy. It was an absolutely huge whiff.
Wow, he plays 12 total energy, 4 of them being double colourless, and still not able to find one. He finally gets himself a type null here. He can pay retreat on the Necrozma. It has a 2 retreat cost, but yeah, he doesn't have it. Zach shows off the double colourless, and that's game.
That is indeed game. So we'll be moving on to game 3. Wow, what a nail biter.
Yeah, so off the end to 1, Zach was able to find himself the double colourless, and it really seemed that Israel didn't ever really get set up. He was only getting type nulls in one of each time, and Zach was very proactive in trying to deal with them, not allowing the Sylvally to get into play. As we saw in the first game, that was able to run riot and get too many energy on the board throughout the game. Israel just dead drew for a few turns, even though he was getting lots of energy into play with turbo arms. They weren't the ideal attackers, and it wasn't the ideal setup for him.
Yeah, no. So this is all it comes down to, folks. Game 3 of round 9. One game is both of these players are one game away from potentially making it into day 2. Again, who will it be? Will it be Israel or will it be Zach?
It's such a Cinderella story for both players as well. Both players picking their own little pet decks. Zach choosing to play the 1/1 Gumshoes. He made it popular in the Glycopod deck. And Israel, he was one of the big people talking about Sylvally, making it a known quantity, saying, hey guys, this is a really, really good card. You need to keep an eye out for it. Showing it today, bringing it to the table and doing really well with it, but will he make day 2 with his own deck?
I would like to draw attention to as well the fact that I've had the pleasure of talking with both of these gentlemen at the World Championships a couple of times. Both just genuinely really lovely. Yeah,
I was chatting to Zach. He's in our same hotel, and I was chatting to him. He's been testing all sorts of decks. He was testing with juniors and seniors, so he's not just thinking about his own performances. He's thinking about all sorts of people. He's just one of those great guys in the community who he's lovely to talk to from anyone, a beginner and the best player in the world. It doesn't matter when you're talking to Zach because he's just such a great guy to chat to.
Yeah, and from my side, my anecdote about Israel is that actually when I went to Worlds, there was something I wanted to get, so I actually had it ordered to his house, and it missed the post box, so he went and drove out all the way to his house to pick it up for me to deliver it to me. I mean, and he barely even knew me. It's really just genuinely lovely guy.
So we do see him. He's got a much better start this time.
Oh,
he's been able to discard a metal energy, all important, so you can get acceleration with all of your attackers. He's also been able to find a choice band as well as a double colours for his type null, and a big Professor Sycamore here to refresh his hand. He also has a Turtonator GX we haven't seen in either of the 2 games so far, but it's still potentially a really good option against the Glycopod, so he chooses to hold it for now, keep it a secret, but he has that in the locker if he needs to for future turns.
Yeah, definitely. Glycopod is the exact reason why you would consider playing Turtonator. It's just it's just a better way of dealing with Glycopod, which is a really big threat to them. Now, from Zach's side, he does start with Tapu Lele, and he's eyeing up the Bridget, so yeah, it looks like we're going to have a proper game here. Both players are going to be able to set up to the maximum efficacy, and not only that, we have 20 minutes left of this game.
Yeah, 20 minutes on the clock. The game has been topsy-turvy, back and forth. Normally it's a big old prize race where both people can take prizes very quickly, and when they're targeting specific targets with Guzma as well. So we've seen fast-paced games for the first 2, even though players weren't drawing optimally. Both players playing at a very good pace here, and I imagine this could be a 3rd game concluded because no one wants to see a tie at this point.
No, of course not. A tie would not help either of them, so with that, off of the Bridget, Jax is going to grab himself 2 Impods and a Remoraid. He's got some energy to attach. It'll be interesting to see where he actually puts this. One option could be to attach to the active, do a flying flip, just to soften some things up, or he could just attach to a grass to the bench, but he does indeed go for the flying flip option.
Yeah, flying flip, the only attack he can really do this turn other than something like an energy drive. But seeing as though the Tapu Koko so efficient and has a free retreat cost, it's just the safest bet to go for. We are going to see over to Israel. He's able to pick up the Sylvally GX, which was a really big top deck for him.
That was actually huge. That enabled everything. His hand was actually really bad if he didn't have that. As it stands, he's able to retreat the Zora, bring up the Sylvally. He's got the energy to attack, so there goes the Turbo Drive, attaching to the Turtonator. That is about as perfect a turn as Israel could have asked for.
And I love that it was just a stonewall reaction. He was like, yeah, of course I had the Sylvally in hand. Of course my turn was excellent. Yeah. It's not like I had nothing before my top deck. So
for any of you watching at home, if you want to look at textbook poker face, there's your man.
Yeah, there we go. So not only is it annoying that there's a prize being taken on Israel, so Zach's a little bit behind, he's also had to promote a Pokemon that has a retreat cost. Always awkward when you're trying to jump into the active position, as the Glycopod deck so often is trying to go for. So we do see the Ultra Ball from Zach. He's going to establish that artillery as we've seen him do in all of his games. He does have more energy to attach, and it's going to be an Abyssal hand here for a few cards. He does also have a clean end that he can be going for in response here.
Yeah, and we see a choice band and a grass engine committed onto the bench win pod. Yeah, there goes the Abyssal Hand. Looks like he finds himself a Gumshoe GX, a couple of supporters, another win pod, it looks like.
He does find himself a Guzma. If he wants to guarantee that he can move into the active, that could be the play for him. Not too many targets that look juicy on his bench, so yeah, it looks like Zach's just going to be content to use the N. He can still find Floatstone off of this and get damage on the most important attacker on Israel's side of the field.
Yeah, the problem with the Guzma is that he didn't actually have anything to evolve into to do any damage with. So
that's true.
He kind of needed the end there because there was no Glycopod to do anything with.
So we are going to see Zach shuffling up, drawing 6 for himself, 5 for Israel. It was actually not too bad for Israel because we knew that he didn't actually have much else in his hand other than just basic metal energy beyond that. So Israel actually also getting a little bit of benefit from this, especially because he was able to draw into a pretty nice hand at this point.
Oh my goodness, that is... has he drawn too much off the end there?
No, I think he's fine. I believe it was only 5.
Let's just double check that.
We can check that with the... Oh, wow.
Oh, dear.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no. All right, hold on.
Play has stopped here. We have to make sure because we know there's new rulings in the Pokemon trading card game that recently did come into effect. If you are someone who draws an extra card, you are punished more severely. This is a new update, and it's rough that this has happened to Israel at this point, but this has to be something that we do resolve.
Yeah. Oh...
We've gone all day without big judge rulings, but it's come right to the end. Yeah. And unfortunately, Israel here, it's a blushing moment for him. He's drawn 6 cards, even though he has taken a prize. It's just so natural that you shuffle and draw 6. That's what typically you think N is in your own head, but when you start taking these prizes, it gets a little bit worse for you. So I believe that under the new rulings, that's a prize penalty for Israel, and that would mean Zach can get an extra card here and even up the prize trade. And also it's now a reveal and shuffle is the new ruling.
Yes, it is. So that card won't even be put at the top of the deck, and you can see by Israel's facial expressions, they kind of say it all here.
Yeah.
It's very much a head slap moment, and it looks like they're going to sort of get over someone else to sort of confirm the ruling, I imagine. It looks like they're just trying to make sure that they get the application of the ruling right in the circumstance.
Yeah, it looks like there'll be a time extension if it does go too long, but we just want to make sure everything's right while we are on stream. This is the most important round where we have to get stuff right, of course. Yeah. It looks like, at the very least, what we could say is that Israel has more than one playable card in his 6-card hand. So if one card in particular is revealed and replaced, he'll still have stuff to do next turn.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those really awkward situations where it's horrible to see it in these circumstances, but it's just part of the game. Unfortunately, you have to keep track of these things. It is your responsibility as a player, and we just have to do our due diligence here. Zach did retreat into the Tapu Lele, but we have pause play, so it essentially will come down to Zach basically has to announce his attack to end his turn, but before we do that, we have to resolve this issue.
Yeah, it's... I'm trying to think of if I've been in any sort of similar situations in the past. I think I remember I put out 8 prize cards in a game once. I'm not quite sure how I did that, but that was amusing to say the least. So, do you have any anecdotes you can share?
Nick, you are the worst cheater, making winning harder for yourself. That is the best way to cheat at the Pokemon trading card game. But no, I don't have many stories. I know I've drawn an extra card here and I've been punished for it. That was just an accidental thing. That was when I was a beginner in the game and stuff like that. But it's just something that isn't a part of the game, and really, it's one of those blushing moments more than anything. We know Israel's been on stream many times, but, it's a high-pressure situation. It's the end of the day. Mistakes happen.
Yeah, they do absolutely happen. And it looks like the judges are just having a discussion now. When rulings like this come back, one thing I always like to do, and I think that it is overdue, we should really give thanks to all of the judges and the volunteers who take their time out to come together and make this event happen. Without the judges, the tournament could not happen. They're the ones to make sure everything keeps running smoothly, to make sure any players' queries are answered, and they really don't get enough thanks, I feel. And
they do it with a smile always as well.
Yeah.
They're lovely people in and outside the game, so it's just amazing to have so many of them dedicated. I think there was 20 or so countries, 20 different countries of judges.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I mean, everyone from around the world just dedicating their time to this entire weekend of Pokemon just for the love of the game.
Yeah, definitely. So, I guess, excusing that in mind, the current state of the game, who do we think is more likely to win? To me, it looks like it could really go either way right now. I mean, both players have got a fairly decent setup. It's we saw there, as you mentioned already, Israel's hand is still playable even after one of the cards gets shuffled back. So, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's still early in the game. As we've seen, Acerola is still a big deciding factor, so someone could be ahead on board state right now, but that could change as Acerolas are played. It looks like we are seeing the judge is shuffling Israel's deck, so there has been a reveal and shuffle. Zach has taken a prize card as the penalty for Israel's error, and we will be seeing now a first impression, it looks like, for 150 damage, seeing as though he did retreat from the Tapu Lele this turn.
Yeah. Are they still discussing something else with the judge? Maybe is there something else that happened, maybe, that I need to talk about?
I think we're just making sure that everything's good to go and we can continue with the game. Both players, this is one of these things you don't want to rush.
Yeah, of course.
Especially because it's a new ruling. We need to make sure that everyone's fully aware and happy with this outcome. And we do just see play resume with the first impression for 150 damage.
Yeah, absolutely. So in return there, Israel we're gonna be able to use the Field Blow there to guard both the Choice Band and the Float Stone, and then gonna play the Ultra Ball, guarding another Ultra Ball and a Metal Energy. Gonna be able to find himself a Zoroark, and this is actually, it's funny because if he is able to evolve that other Zoroark into a Zoroark, he can actually make that prize penalty kind of irrelevant, because he can force Zach to just KO free GX Pokemon anyway.
I mean, prizes are always a big thing, but we are going to see him, starting to develop his side of the board at the very least. We're going to see the first trade from the Zoroark GX. Looks like he drew into a couple of awkward cards here. He does have himself an attachment, not quite a double Colourless Energy, so maybe onto the Turtonator. It looks like he's going to set up for future turns and allow this Silvally to get knocked out.
Yeah, so there goes with the Turbo Drive. We're going to do 120 to the Golisopod and attaching onto the Necrozma again. Just making sure he's aware, making sure that Zach doesn't get a little bit too overeager, thinking, it's fine. No, it's not fine. We've got to be wary of it.
Yeah, you've got to be dealing with all these sorts of factors, and we are going to see Zach. Play goes over to him. We find a Choice Band on the Wimpod. He does have another Wimpod, a couple of Guzma, and also a Kukui, as well as Sycamore. He's got a hand stacked with supporters. He has his pick, and looks like he's opting to go for Professor Sycamore as his choice, looking to find maybe things like Float Stone, maybe double Colourless Energy to finish off the Silvally here.
Yeah, just because just doing 30 alone won't be enough. It'll be just that little bit short. So you would have to, if he finds a Choice Band, or did he actually miss?
I think he's actually in a bit of a spot here. I don't think he can even thin his hand size enough for an Octillery to draw him out. Maybe with a Field Blower, just he can have one draw to maybe get him that. Yeah. We are seeing things add up here. There's the Field Blower. It's a big single card draw from Abyssal Hands. Can it bail him out?
Float Stone. It's Kukui.